Factors influencing what we eat continue. Food industry and the media. Food industry, food advertising, food portrayal in the media, reporting of nutrition and health studies, as we'll learn in this class, as I'm sure you've been exposed to in the first lecture. There's a lot of mistruths, things that aren't necessarily based on fact. Can anybody give me an example of a food ad that they've run into that they can say, oh wow, maybe that's a little bit suspect? Currently, anybody seen V8 ads? The new awakening fruit? Right, so this woman is eating a peach and it's at the peak of ripeness and it happens to maybe dribble a little bit of juice down her chin, right? And she gets it on her nice clothes. She uses the necessary precautions that would ward off maybe her getting her clothes a little bit dirty, and that was then portrayed to us as being a huge inconvenience. So then she could just have this V8 juice, right, and just drink it. What's the problem with that? Are those two things equal? Is that whole food equal to the juice? What's the juice missing? Right, so there's going to be a ton of fiber there. There's going to be a bunch of micronutrients in that, right, or in the skin as well. With the juice, usually there's going to be a bunch of other stuff added. What's going to be added? Right, and then what kind of sugar are we talking about? Is it just a monosaccharide like fructose? Probably not. It's going to be that high fructose corn syrup, things like that. And it's a shelf-stable food, so it's going to have stabilizers and mold inhibitors and things like that. When you get into juices, as we're going to talk about today when we talk about suspensions and emulsifications, remember it all the way back to our periodic table of elements and atomic weight. When you get into juices, there's several different materials. So when they sit on a shelf, those materials are going to do what we call differentiate and sort themselves according to their molecular weight, those light materials. You might have made a vinaigrette and put it in their fridge drawer and walked away and came back later. What's going to happen to it? It's going to differentiate, right? The oil is less atomic weight than the water, the aqueous solution, which is going to be your vinegar. So there'll be a strata of that vinegar at the bottom. If you've got any aromatics or herbs, there'll be a little strata of that dividing the aqueous solution or the vinegar and then the unsaturated fat or the oil on top. Well, with juices, the same thing's going to happen. That's why you give orange juice a shake. But when they homogenize these things, they're going to put a stabilizer or a hydrocolloid or an emulsifier in there to make sure that that liquid is going to be homogeneous through and through. All these materials, our body can take that peach that we were talking about before, eat it, and it comes in the context of having a bunch of fiber to it. We've been leaning into our ultra metabolism, right? So we kind of know what glycemic load is, correct? Go over it really quick. Glycemic load, we talk about glycemic response. Nutritionally speaking, that's becoming a little bit antiquated, so we talk about glycemic load. That's the rate at which all that sugar is absorbed. So when you drink a soda, blood sugar spikes, right? Gets up really high. Does that stick around for a really long time? No, it's ephemeral. Drops right after that. When your blood sugar drops, it's going to say, hey, wait, I'm hungry, I need to eat a little bit more. So when we talk about having a high glycemic load, that sugar is going to hit you right away. When we talk about having a low glycemic load, that food is going to have a lot of fiber with it. It decreases the rate of absorbability. So it's more like, I want you to think about it like it sticks to the ribs a little bit more. So that sugar is going to be this slow and steady pulse, and it's going to keep you feeling satiated for a longer period of time, other than that ephemeral boom and then the bust from a blood sugar standpoint telling you that you're really hungry. So that's one, reporting of nutrition and health studies. Come on, you guys, you gotta have something. Anybody watch Care 11? Last week there was a woman from the American Dietetics Association expelling myths about food. She was saying, when they were asking, is it just a myth that fresh broccoli is better for you than canned or frozen broccoli? She said, oh, that's a myth. The canned and the frozen is better because they pick it at the peak of season and then they freeze that in, or they can that in. So all all those nutrients are locked in. Anybody see some problems with that? Right, you can't eat that broccoli frozen, right? Anybody left a can of soda in their car in February in Minnesota? What happens to it? It explodes. Well, guess what? There's a lot of water in that cellulose, that plant tissue in that broccoli when they freeze it, right? Cellulose tissue. Anybody froze greens, leafy greens before, salad greens? The refrigerator gets too cold and they get a little crisp to them. Well, what happens to them after that? They slump out, right? They're really slumpy. They're not rigid. So we talk about turgor pressure. There's little packets of fluid in cellulose tissue, cellulose or plant tissue, and they're really thin membranes. When you've got a green that's really rigid and crisp, the turgor pressure, the pressure of fluid within that membrane, there's a lot of pressure there, keeping things really crisp. Well, like the soda that explodes in your car, when cellulose tissue is frozen, the liquid in those turgids or in that little sack of fluid, the membrane blows out too because you get that violent expansion and contraction during the freezing process, causing everything to slump. Well, water-soluble vitamins, they're pretty important, correct? If all of that stuff slumps, if all of that water purges out of your cellulose tissue, that is water-soluble vitamins. So unless you eat that broccoli frozen, which I don't know too many people that are a fan of that, a different kind of sweet and cold treat, I guess, but not all that appealing of with the magic. So unless you eat that frozen, then that myth that she was trying to debunk is debunked. How about the argument of canned foods? Sorry, did you have a comment?
I have a question. I get frozen like blueberries and such, and I don't cook them. I just let them defrost and put them in some cereal. Is that
If you just throw them in your cereal,
right?
then that's going to purge out into your milk and
Okay.
influence that. You drink that milk and you're going to get those nutrients.
Okay.
Yeah. If you use them in smoothies and things like that, absolutely. If you were to throw that frozen broccoli in a smoothie and pulse it up, okay, then there's an argument there. Classes of nutrients, just a really, really brief overview. On the, I guess that would be on your left-hand side, carbohydrates, lipids, fats, and proteins. I'm going to refer to these as macronutrients. Carbohydrates responsible for, starts with an E, energy, right? Fats and lipids, they're responsible for a couple of different things. They're responsible for energy as well. Anybody want to take a stab at what else it's responsible for?